All right, so today we're going to talk about el imperfecto. So, use the imperfect tense to talk about actions that happened regularly. All right. In English, you often want to say used to or would. So here's the endings that we're going to have for that. We've got AR verbs right here and ER/IR verbs right there. Ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, and ian. And then aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, and aban. If you didn't notice this last year in Spanish too, hopefully you'll notice it now. This one and this one are the same. And this one and this one are the same. So first person singular and third person singular are the same in the imperfect. That's not meant to confuse you. Honestly, it should just make your life easier because you got one less ending to memorize. Now note right here, stem changing verbs do not have a stem change in the imperfect. Okay, so again, something to make your life easier. The only irregular verbs in the imperfect are ir, ser, and ver. And I can't say that I'm surprised. They're always causing problems. So that's what we've got so far. Pardon that glitch. All right, so let's move on here. These are our irregular forms of those verbs. So I've got iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, ibais, iban. Again, it's the same in the first person singular and the third person singular. And then we've got era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. That's what you do when you have too much stuff on the page, is you erase it. All right. Funny joke. All right, ver. Veía, veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, and then veían. All right, so we've got those taken care of. Now, the imperfect form of I is había. So if I want to say there were 33 students in my class, habían 33 estudiantes en mi clase. I would use había instead of I, and there you go. And the past tense of I is hubo. I don't know if y'all have seen it. I feel like you've seen it, but I don't know if you've used it or remembered it. So hubo being a past tense, a preterite past tense word, it's going to be used for things that happened, one time and were finished. So, de repente hubo un ruido, right? Like suddenly there was a noise. So that's when you would use hubo versus había. Había is probably the one you're going to use most often. So, moving on, use the imperfect to describe something that used to take place regularly. So that comes into play for, like, I used to go to the park a lot with my friends. My family and I went to the beach a lot. Or I took piano lessons, because those piano lessons happened regularly, right? So keep that in mind. And then describe people, places, and situations in the past. So when you're describing characteristics of someone, like the weather, I think it has as an example in your book. The weather is one of those. We're gonna have an acronym that we go over soon, and the weather falls under that acronym. But because it's a description, it becomes the imperfect. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't say that it hailed, right? Like if it hailed, that happened one time and it's over with. But if I'm trying to say the weather was nice or it was hot, then that becomes the imperfect. It hailed, it happened, it's over. All right. And then to talk about a past action that was continuous or kept happening, which is basically the same thing as that one. And then date, time, age, and weather. And again, we'll get to that in a few minutes. So let's move on to some key words that will help us use the imperfect. All right, so keywords that signal which past tense to use. You've got keywords for your imperfect and keywords for your preterite. And there's a whole lot of space here. There's so many words you could put on the line. And if you don't know what these words mean, you need to go back and write what they mean as well. But let me pull up the imperfect list first. And you'll want to probably pause the video on this screen and write these down. All right, so we've got siempre, which means always, and that makes sense, right? So if I'm talking about the past tense and I'm using always, then obviously it's something that happened a lot. Todos los días, every day. That also indicates that it happened a lot. A veces, that's a great phrase. It's on my word wall. It's very important. It gets used all the time. A veces, sometimes, and sometimes means more than one time, right? And that's kind of what I'm going to end up telling y'all to do is always think about did it happen once or more than one time. So, a veces, more than one time. Por lo general, in general. Generalmente, same thing. Algunas veces, some of the times, same thing as a veces. Mientras is while, and that doesn't actually mean that it happened a lot of times, but it does indicate an action in progress that got interrupted, and that is another time that imperfect gets used is maybe you'll say it was raining when all of a sudden it started snowing. Or I was talking on the phone when I heard a loud noise. So the mientras would happen in the middle of that and interrupt an action in progress. Los fines de semana indicates on the weekends. If I say el fin de semana pasado, now all of a sudden I'm talking about last weekend. Which, by the way, inside of that weekend I could be talking about imperfect, but just mentioning last weekend seems more preterite than it does all of the weekends as a child. Does that make sense? Los domingos, same thing as los fines de semana. When you put los in front of a day of the week or in front of a generalization, like los fines de semana, it becomes on the. So los fines de semana on the weekends, los domingos on Sundays, los lunes on Mondays, los sábados por la noche, Saturdays at night. Cada día, every day. Very similar to todos los días. Usualmente, usually, frecuentemente, con frecuencia, a menudo, all of those mean frequently. Cada mes means every month. De vez en cuando is every once in a while, but still, even though that doesn't sound like it happened that often, it still happened more than once. So keep that in mind. Now let's look at the preterite keyword. And you're going to want to write these right here under el pretérito. So I've got ayer, that's yesterday. Anteayer, the day before yesterday. That's a great word, by the way. I'd make use of that. Anoche, last night. El sábado pasado, last Saturday. El fin de semana pasado, last weekend. That's what I was saying earlier. Un día, one day. El otro día, the other day. Alguna vez, sometime. Oopsie daisy. All right. Alguna vez, sometime. Por primera vez, the first time. De pronto, de repente. All those little words that happen like boom, all of a sudden this happened. A lot of those transitional words are going to fall under preterite. Finalmente and por fin, finally, el domingo is on Sunday. So, difference being, el domingo means on Sunday. Los domingos means on Sundays. So, as soon as I made it plural, I made it something that happened more than once. And literally, the word is plural, which kind of indicates more than once. Una vez, clearly one time. El día que, the day that something happened. So, that would indicate that it happened one time. So there's some keywords for you. Go ahead and you want to memorize those keywords. Definitely know what they mean. I mean, in my opinion, you don't really have to memorize. Preterite has all these words and imperfect has all these words. It depends on how your mind works, because my mind works as all of these words right here, ayer, anteayer, anoche, el sábado pasado, all those things, all those words make sense to me. When I understand that ayer means yesterday, yesterday is the past, so whatever I'm talking about happened yesterday, it's probably something that happened. I bought a new car. I did my homework. I washed my hair. Okay? Things that happened in the imperfect, siempre, todos los días. Those are things like I'm telling you when I was a child I was mischievous, or I got into a lot of trouble, or I studied a lot, or I had lots of friends, or I used to braid my hair every day, or whatever. Point being, all of these words right here, siempre, todos los días, a veces, por lo general, all of those words kind of indicate that it happened more than once. So I don't really need to put them in a list. I just need to understand these words and know that they indicate that something happened more than once. Does that make sense? If you have trouble with what I just explained, then yes, go back, write these bad boys down until you remember them. In my opinion, if you want to be fluent, these are words that you need to have on your frequently used word list. But again, do what feels right to you. All right, so let's move on and talk about the different little acronyms here. I'm sure you were hoping and praying that you would have more acronyms to memorize. I think this is probably smart that you memorize it this way. I also like to use my final way that I will tell you at the end. Yes, you have to watch the end of the video to find out the super secret way to memorize all this business. But here we go. Oh crap, there it is right there. There's the super secret way. All right, well, wait until the end. All right, Atreyu. Helpful acronyms. So for the imperfect, we've got water loads, and we'll get to that bottom one in a minute. But let's start at the top, weather. So again, if I'm describing the weather, and this a lot of this stuff kind of reminds me of Sarah versus a star. So if it's something that's more of a description sort of thing, like that would go on the SARE chart, it's something that's probably going to be under the imperfect. So when I'm describing the weather, I'm saying it was very sunny. Instead of saying, hacía mucho calor, like it was very hot, instead of hizo mucho calor. So I'm going to use the imperfect for that when I'm talking about the weather. Now again, if it started to rain, then I could say empezó a llover. Does that make sense? Because it started. There was an actual end. This is apparently German right here, but like I'm saying, there was a beginning or an end to an action, and that's an example right there. So when it started to rain, that's what's going on there. Now, hopefully you understand the weather point of view. Now, when I'm talking about age, that's just straightforward imperfect. So tenía 15 años. There you go. Age. Cuando tenía 15 años, when I was 15. Telling time. Again, this is just one of those weird ones. Kind of like, I think that time sounds like a very temporary thing. I think that time sounds like a very temporary thing, but apparently it is not, right? Time falls under the verb ser. So same thing here. Time is going to fall under imperfect. Emotions. Now their emotions, so that doesn't work with the ser versus star thing, but their emotions, and I'm describing the way someone was. And if you think about it, emotions are kind of like the weather of people, right? It was sunny, it was raining, I was happy, I was crying. So when I'm talking about emotions, I'm describing myself, and I like to think of it this way. Did I have that smiley face just for 1 second and then it was gone? Or was I more likely happy for a while? Repeated action, that's the kind of thing like iba al parque cada día. I went to the park every day. Location, I'm describing a location, and again, I have to think of it as that thing was there forever. So, estaba al centro de la ciudad, like it was in the center of the city, right? Ongoing action, this is the one I was talking about earlier, like estaba hablando por teléfono cuando de repente oí un ruido. Like I was talking on the phone when suddenly I heard a sound. So that was an ongoing action. Estaba llamando por teléfono. That got interrupted by an interrupting action, actually. Attitude, that's the same thing as emotions. I think it just makes a nicer word, so they've separated them. So attitude and emotions, they're very similar. Descriptions, again, if I'm describing something as being, it was a very scary movie, or it was a dangerous highway, or anything like that. If I'm saying it was dangerous, that's a description, and so I'm going to be using the imperfect for that. And then date is just like time. Just stick with it. Date goes under imperfect. And then setting and background would be, it happened at the waterfall or whatever. So again, I'm kind of describing something there. Now your your preterite reasons are right here. It began or it ended in action. So llegué a la fiesta, I arrived at the party. That began something that happened, right? Or me levanté muy temprano en la mañana, like I woke up very early in the morning, I got up very early in the morning, and then everything that happens after that, I could use the imperfect, but maybe that began an action. And then one-time action in the past, again, did it happen one time or more than one time? Specific action in the past,